Okay, so yes, good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to our session on APA style referencing 7th edition. I know a number of people signed up, but I haven't seen those numbers turn up in our list as yet. So I'm expecting persons to join us. So I can probably make a short start. A slow start, I think. All right, so for those of you who did not come to this morning session, I'm Dr. Shamin, Renwick, and I will be doing today's presentation. And Ms. Jolie Raja, one of the librarians of the Jordan Library, is accompanying me. And if you have any questions, you can type it into the chat. I will try and monitor the chat myself as well, so we'll see how it goes. If not, I'll stop at times and ask if there are any questions as we go through. For those of you, maybe you can, people are confirming that you are hearing me. I am not sure. Okay. If you would, I think someone might have said something by now. Okay, so for the School of Education students, the MPhils and the PhDs, in February, I will be doing 5 sessions on finding information, APA style, writing your literature review, and EndNote. So if anyone is here who is not an MPhil or PhD student at the School of Education, and you would like to attend those sessions, they will be on Tuesdays at 4:30 p.m. And they'll run for 2.5 hours. Send me a note and I will send you the link accordingly. Okay, so that is my introduction, and let us make a start on the presentation. And I'm just checking. All right, so I am not sure what. Is anyone seeing a green line across my screen? Your screen?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, I'm not sure why that is there. Maybe I should re-share my screen and get rid of that. Okay, give me a moment while I'm still hearing people coming in, so. All right. That's it. So I'm just going to mention briefly about academic integrity. We will talk a little bit about plagiarism. We'll talk about in-text citation style for APA and how you do your references and the handout. As I said just now, I'm doing sessions for my MPhils and PhDs in February. And this session is an abbreviated version of what I will do then, which is why I'm inviting anyone who wants to be APA if you wish to attend those, because this class is about 1.5 hours and we will not get time to practice and we will not get time to do some of the additional things I would normally share with the MPhils and PhDs. So what is academic integrity? It means to act with values of honesty, trust, fairness, respect, responsibility, and courage. Okay. And some examples of what we call misconduct or not acting with integrity is if you violate course rules, falsification, fabrication, dishonesty, and any of the work that you provide, whether it's lab work or otherwise, if you try to alter your grades. But amongst all of these possible violations, submitting plagiarized work for a course or program assignment or thesis is definitely an example of misconduct and demonstration of a lack of integrity. So let us talk about plagiarism. What is plagiarism? So what I want you to do is, hold on, let me put the chat. So in the chat, I'm going to put a link, and I'd like you to go to the link, or if you go to menti.com and enter 16741840, tell me what is plagiarism. Can we do that? So we'll see what our thoughts are. plagiarism, and I'm going to share here what persons have indicated is plagiarism. So if you go to the menti.com, use the code or the link, and you click on the screen, I think you'll be able to type, or you may see a plus sign at the bottom here, and that allows you to do it. Right. Now giving source credit when credit is due. Good. Anybody else? Many undergrads believe that plagiarism is not explained properly, but through the years you would have encountered it if you're a postgrad student, taking someone's work and ideas without being credited. Theft is a good word to put it as well, without proper referencing, passing off someone else's work without giving credit, pretending it's yours. I like that word, pretending. Do we have anyone else who wish to share what they think? All right, so it means that, okay, so you're given some thought to it. If you continue writing, I would certainly see it after, reproducing someone else's work as your own and not giving credit. So we're talking definitely about, and how do you give credit in academic work? How you do that is by citing and referencing. And that is what we're going to talk about today. So to plagiarize means to steal or pass off ideas, work, code, images, anything that someone else has created. So it's not only literary information, but you can plagiarize in other ways as well. What I'd like to share with you here is that plagiarism is really a Western concept. To the Chinese, it is an honor to copy the original. In some countries, there's no concept of intellectual property as in the West. To those whose first language is not English, they feel they cannot say it better. And to others, it is accepted that you can copy verbatim because that's what they're expected to do in exams. Remember when we train people for A-levels, we tend to tell them to memorize things. So plagiarism is definitely a concept you have to come to terms with your own sense of ethics and integrity and how far you're going to go and what is acceptable and not. So examples of plagiarism is when you paraphrase or summarize without citing the source, quoting a source without using quotation marks, even if you cited it, changing words but copying the sentence structure without giving credit, copying so many words or ideas in a source that it makes up the majority of your work, whether you give credit or not. So notice, just sticking in a reference does not mean that you have not plagiarized. And plagiarism can be considered unintentional or deliberate. So how do you avoid plagiarism? And citing or referencing is one of the means of doing that. And there are standardized ways to cite and reference Chicago, Vancouver, MLA, Harvard, and of course AP. And what these styles provide is a manual with guidelines for both formatting an academic paper and citing sources of information. So this style provides guidelines, not so much rules, which sometimes leave things to be interpreted in different ways. So one of the things I have done is create a handout that kind of outlines what we expect here to you if we're checking your thesis and things like that. So where there's ambiguity, I have tried in that handout to be clear as to how you should deal with it. So how to incorporate the ideas from others in your work. You can do so with indirect quotes where you paraphrase and summarize, or you use direct quotes, that is, using the author's exact words. So paraphrasing, when you paraphrase, you should use a different sentence structure. You should maintain the meaning of the original idea. You can vary words, but you must retain proper names, technical terms, and numbers. Use your own style of writing, even if it does not feel as perfect as the original. To paraphrase is to show that you have internalized the thought and you are able to express it. And then you do your citation. So a paraphrase, it might be about the same length as the original paragraph or idea that you want to write about. But a summary, also, when you summarize, it's like speaking about an entire book in just a paragraph or an entire chapter. So summarize is shorter than the original. And the other thing we have found is students tend to write, he stated, she said, they noted. So there are other reporting verbs that you can use to lift your writing a little bit and sometimes explain what you mean more clearly. And this is just an example of some of those words. So let us talk now about direct quotes. So some good reasons to include a quote is because you want to add credibility, because the original is difficult to paraphrase, or you just want to preserve the language of that quote. But you should use direct quotations sparingly. Use them when you want to make a point, bring in an argument home. Because if you have too many quotations, you start to lose your own voice when you're writing. And I would suggest you try to stick to the most powerful ones and not just take minor quotes and stick them into your paper. Short quotes in APA, not other styles, is considered less than 40 words. And in this case, you enclose the quote in quotation marks, all right? For the person, the in-text citation, the person's name must be mentioned in front or after, or even inside the quote, but I would normally recommend in front or after. So it would look like this. You can introduce a quotation with a comma, and notice that if you do that, you do not have to capitalize the first letter. You can use a colon, and there you capitalize the first letter. And if you say researchers found that so and so and so and so, you do not need any punctuation. And when you do a short quote that is within the line of within your paragraph, you put a full stop at the end of the sentence, including the in-text citation information. Long quotes, that is more than 40 words, you will do a block indent. So you indent, you introduce a quote, you indent by ½ inch. You put a full stop at the end of the quotation. Notice there are no quotation marks, there's no italics, you just simply do an indentation. And there is no full stop at the end of the in-text citation. So I see a few more persons have joined us. I'm just going to repeat. If you have a question, just put it into the text. I will share my contact information at the end if you wish to speak to me or one. If you make changes to quotations that you take from books, there are some things you need to do. So first, you must reproduce as in the original. So even if you are writing British style, but the quote has American spelling, you have to retain it. All right. You refer to the style guidelines when changing quotations in significant ways. So if you're fixing spelling, punctuation, or grammatical errors, you put square brackets with SIC in italics immediately after the error. If you have omitted words in the middle of a quotation, you use ellipses, that is 3 dots, to represent the omitted text. If you insert a word into a quotation, you put it in square brackets. And if you add emphasis, you can italicize words, and you can add author emphasis after you have done the italicizing. So let's talk about APA referencing style. So this is what the cover looks like. We have copies here at the School of Education. I'm not sure if Jordan has copies of APA, but there are no e-copies available to the University of the West Indies. APA only allows e-copies for individual libraries. And I will provide an APA guide and handouts at the end of the class. And I will share the link with you so you will have access to them. So who uses APA 7th edition at the UWE St. Augustine? It's students in the Faculty of Humanities and Education, School of Ed, Communication Studies, the Faculty of Sports, the Faculty of Social Sciences, Psychology students, Faculty of Medical Sciences, School of Nursing, and Psychiatry. So if anyone is present and you do not belong to one of these departments or faculties, departments, you may need to double check with your librarian what citation style you should be using. So I am going to give you 3 minutes and I want you on your own, pull up a Word document, pull out a piece of paper, and do a reference for a book entitled Forged from the Love of Liberty, Selected Speeches of Dr. Eric Williams, written by the Honorable Dr. Eric Eustace Williams and Paul T. Sutton, which was published in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago by Longman Caribbean in 1981. So starting now, I'm going to time you. Just, like I said, open a Word document, pull out a piece of paper, and attempt to do, in APA style, please, do a reference. And we're going to have a look at it in 3 minutes. So I'm setting my timer to 2.5 now. Do not go on the internet and check it, please. You're doing this as an impromptu exercise. Do not get any assistance. You do not have to be right. You are going to correct it yourself. So please just make an attempt. And let's see what we come up with. I hope you're having fun. All right, 60 seconds left. Okay. Fifteen seconds left. Okay, so let's see what it's supposed to look like, and maybe you can compare yours and see if you got what you got right. So Williams, E. E. Williams and Sutton, P.K., 1981, Poet from the Love of Liberty, selected speeches by Dr. Eric Williams in italics, Longman, Caribbean, William and Sutton. I see Mr. Matura. Okay, so if it's narrative and it's outside, you put and, but if it's in brackets, you have to use the ampersand. Notice both authors, when voted, there are full stops after the initials. There's a space between the initials. The date is enclosed in brackets. The title of the book is in italics. We use sentence styles, so we had selective capitalization. We no longer put the place of publication in the 7th edition. We put the publisher. All right, Mr. Matura, it's your response. Gillian Weeks, okay, you got that one right. So that was just to introduce you. So I have another exercise for you to do. And I put in the chat a Padlet, and I want you to go to that link that I put in the chat and tell me what are your challenges you have when you're doing citing and referencing. And I'm going to pull up the Padlet and let's see what people have to say. It doesn't have your name, so you can type in whatever you think are the challenges you have when you're doing referencing. And that will give me an idea of some of the questions you have that I can address as we speak, as I speak for the rest of the session. So this is your opportunity to make all your complaints about referencing and citing. So just click on the plus sign and, oh no, that's the add file. I think you just start writing. You better try and let's see what are some of your challenges. Oh, these are some long challenges, taking forever to write or bandwidth is slow. Oh, I see a name coming up. That's fine. Doesn't matter, Miss Boyer. We'd be happy to know what are your thoughts. Referencing slide numbers in PowerPoint. Great, we're going to handle that today. It's time consuming to do it manually. Sometimes I forget the order. That's fine. I'm going to try and treat with a simple way for you to remember the order. Listen, do not feel how I check the manual all the time because I have about 10 different styles in my head. Chicago, APA, ACS, Vancouver, Harvard, the 2 variations of Chicago. So I always need to check my manual. Don't feel a how. Sometimes overwhelming with the different APA guidelines, which is why I'm producing one handout, one place for you to do it. Because if you go to the manual and it's ambiguous, you will have difficulty. So let's hope that in the handout I do helps with that problem. But the order, we'll try and treat with the order. I've downloaded different handouts and still, okay, so I want you to use the one, since I am checking your thesis, use our School of Education handout, okay? I have difficulty citing some websites as their references and year of publication are hard to find. That is fine. Sometimes it is not listed. We're going to treat with how we handle missing information. If not in this class, certainly in the one to the pages and episode. A major challenge is keeping up with the numerous articles, books, and papers we read. Copying and pasting relevant information into the referencing folder in Microsoft prevents you time consuming. And sometimes all the information is not available on the websites where we access. Okay, So there is something called missing information. Not everybody, not all websites, not all, some of the older books, for example, may not have all of the elements that you need. We will talk about that. Hopefully I left in this slide about missing information. If I didn't, I will speak to it. Great, thank you very much. I'm happy that you shared your challenges. Continue writing, citing quotes in the document as well. All right, so we will deal how to, well, hopefully I've put in some slides because I did take a few out for this session. All right, thank you very much for that. Most appreciated. So when you're selecting your sources to cite, over the years, I've had a number of questions from students, and some students tell me they only use things from the last 5 years. There is no time limit. Please, unless your lecturer gives you an assignment or a paper to write and tells you specifically last 2, 5 years, 10 years. Other than that, especially for your thesis, when a lot of seminal words are needed, you can't limit it. I see someone says when there are more than 2 authors, we're going to deal with that as well. Okay. So references should always be relevant and reliable. Okay. You cannot just put things in for the sake of impressing your examiners. Cite only works that you have read. Cite secondary sources sparingly. I'll explain what secondary sources are. That means try to have as few of those as possible. When you're citing the edition of the book, do not look for the latest edition. Cite the edition that you are holding in your hands or viewing on the screen. Even when sources cannot be retrieved for personal communication like email, still credit them in the text and tell you how to do that. And avoid using online sources that are no longer recoverable. So if you have a website link that is not working, it is not advisable to put it into your thesis. There is something called reference rot, where many theses, especially scientific theses, after a few years, up to 25% of the links are working. But when you actually submit your thesis, you should make every effort to have a working link or no link. So another bit of advice on selecting your sources is do not publish in or cite from predatory journals. Before, I did not do an interactive something, but anybody wants to put into the chat what is a predatory journal, or maybe I believe you might be able to unmute. I'll take at least one person unmuted and everybody else can put into the chat what is predatory journals. And if you do not know, just simply say unknown, do not know. So I have no takers to be unmuting. I'm not sure, that is fine. I'm going to explain, Ms. Marshall. All right, Jillian. One more response. Okay, so let me tell you what it is. These are journals which are not peer-reviewed or scholarly. Instead of asking, because I know we do not have all that much time, peer-reviewed material, which you as PhD and postgrad students are supposed to be using, is information published that has been reviewed by experts in your area. Predatory journals are journals that pretend to be academic and often claim that they're peer-reviewed when they're actually not. So this is a definition that I got from Nature, all right? And it says that predatory journals and publishers, there are predatory publishers. Today, there are predatory conferences and there are predatory courses, but we will stick to predatory journals for this class. Are entities that prioritize self-interest at the expense of scholarship. So they make money off of what we do in academia. And they are characterized by false or misleading information, deviation from the best editorial and publication practices. There is a lack of transparency and or the use of aggressive and indiscriminate solicitation practices. So they bombard you with spam and junk to try and get you to publish within their journals, and they charge you exorbitant amounts of money, promising that it will be scholarly and peer-reviewed when it is not. So it's really a scam. And so there's no review by experts. It's not written to the standard of academia. They charge authors large fees to publish, so it's money-making, it's fraudulent. They claim to be indexed in EBSCO and Scopus and Web of Science. They claim to have an impact factor, which we all look up to. They provide metrics, which is usually wrong, incorrect. And very often they claim to publish in almost every discipline. You'll see a journal of science and literature and economics and accounting. So there are indications that journals are predatory. All right. They promise to peer review, but no editing, publishing. They will publish in a few days. And another indication is they have fake editorial boards. Many people have seen their names and faces and addresses and contact information on these fraudulent journals. And they use spam to solicit articles. Right? You can check a journal's authenticity before citing them in your text and including them in your reference list. The University of the West Indies subscribes to a resource called Camel's List, which identifies journal titles and publishers that are predatory. It's accessible via the library subscribed resources in the A to Z database list. But you can simplify your life and simply ask your librarian for clarification and assistance. All right. And if any of you plan to work with the university to publish in these journals, universities will not recognize your publications for recruitment to hire you or for your promotion and tenure. Okay. I am just casting my eye on the wall that I had earlier, and somebody asked, how do you cite non-confidential data you extracted from your emails or database, but is not officially published? All right. So it's how to handle emails. I'm not sure which database you're talking about, but when we come to that, maybe you can explain. All right. So when to cite? You cite whenever you have statistics. You cannot say 50% of the population of Trinidad and Tobago is involved in crime unless you can say where you got that information from. Information that is unique and most people don't know it. If the reader asks, how do you know that? So your readers should not be able to question you. Whenever you paraphrase or summarize, and whenever you do a direct quote. So we're leaving that and we're moving into in-text citations now. And in order to create your in-text citation and your reference, you're going to have to take note of the source information. So what you need to do is to take down the full bibliographical. And by bibliographical, I simply mean the publication information from the document from which you have taken your notes. So for a book, you will go to the title page or the verso, which is the back of the title page, where you often see that copyright information. For a journal, if it's in print, the cover, the contents page. Some journals print their contents page on the back of the journal. If it's online and it's a PDF, you can look at the top or the footer or the end of the document to get that volume number, issue number, that kind of thing. On a website, you may look at the top of the page, the bottom of the page. You may even go to the About Us page to get some information. You do not include the street address of the publisher of books and journals. I've seen people do that. No, you do not need street addresses. You do not include the international standard book number, the ISBN or the ISSN for serial. And you write down order of the authors as they are listed in the document. In the book, it's on the title page. You do not rearrange it alphabetically. First author has a lot of implications and importance in a document like a journal. So it's very important to maintain the order. Take down this information the first time you take notes and include page numbers, especially for direct quotes. For page numbers, I will talk about, I should really say locator information. We're going to come to that just now. If you keep photocopies, take note of missing details. Don't look at a photocopy 6 months after and realize that you did not write down everything. If you have found your references in a database, the required information can be saved or printed out. And if you use reference management software, you can often save the citation as well as the document, if it's a journal article, directly in your own database. So we are going to talk about in-text citations. APA is considered an author date format. And by that, I mean the author's name and the year comes first, all right, with a complete reference in the reference list. You may include what we call locator information, and that could be your page number, your slide number, your section number, etc. Right? So an example of an in-text citation would be Naipaul, 1960, use brackets, or Naipaul, 1960, P full stop 25. Right? So Naipaul is your author, your year. You leave a space before the brackets, you leave a space between the comma and P. And this is a common mistake. Many students do not put a space between page number and the numeral. The reference, matching reference will look like this, and this will be in your reference list, and that will be, there's a space between the initials. Now, before I go any further, I do not want you to memorize any of this. Okay, that's the first thing. What I want you to pay attention to are the principles. So if I say APA is an author date style and the author's name comes first and the year comes second, then I should not see a list of references from you with the year at the end. I see Mr. Matura asked if I'm sharing, but my screen says stop share. So, Ms. Matura,
we're seeing it.
Okay, so maybe you need to check something for you. All right, thanks, really. All right, so to return, yeah. So I'm stressing that you need not memorize. What I want you to look for is the principles and approach to in-text citation, which I want to point you to patterns to guide you in how you approach it. You will have the handout, the manual is there. They will give you the very tiny specific full stop and comma. But what I really want you to do is listen and take in. Oh, sorry, Julie. Thanks, Julie. All right. So I'm back to the presentation. All right. Yes. So I'm just trying to make it clear. This is an academic skill that you're going to need throughout your life. If you stay in academia or you get into a job where you have to produce reports, write something if you want to publish. So get comfortable with all of the idea that referencing is something that you will be doing, and do not approach it as a nuisance. All right. Okay. Moving on. So locator information. So we have, if it's a single page, you have P full stop. If it's a range, you have PP full stop space. And if there are multiple pages, you can do space, comma, and then put another range, a single item. If you have works that do not have page numbers, so there's still locator information, all right, you're using another identifier instead of a page number. It's based on how the work is organized. So if you're on a website and there are paragraphs, you may say para, full stop, 2. A full heading or a section name. So you can say in the anatomy section, If you have numbered your thesis in section 1.1, section 1.5, 2.1, you can use numerals. You can use an abbreviated heading or section name in quotation marks. So you have your in-text citation, and then you say imagination begins at section. And you can have a combination regarding section paragraphs 4 to 5. All right. If it's, I think I dropped this on my slide. So somebody had asked about PowerPoint. So what you would have for PowerPoint is Golden 2019, comma, slide 3, right? Capital SLIDE 3, numeral 3 or 3 to 5, and then you close your brackets. All right, so that's how you put your locator information. So in-text citations are referred to in APA in two ways: your parenthetical format, which is when the focus is on the idea, and the narrative format, use this when the author is the focus. So that is what APA says. I will leave it up to you to have a mix. Both forms should be used in the same paper. I've had students come and ask me if they should use one, so I'm clarifying. And what you're looking for is to make your writing readable and interesting. So using both formats help, right? So the research revealed that users quotation all the way down to process, and then we have the parenthetical, meaning we have the brackets, author's surname, the year, the locator information. And then we have the narrative format, and then we have the same locator information. And what is different with APA from Chicago and some of the other styles, and for those present, Chicago is still my first my first choice. Chicago, you would normally put the page number and you would put 2010, 12. But in APA, you put the page information at the end of the sentence. So in-text citation formats. It depends on the number of authors. So if you know APA 6 and this is APA 7, there has been one major change, and that is when it's 3 or more authors, you use et al. In APA 6, you wrote out up to 5 authors. Okay? So this is a major change. But to start at the beginning, one author, which is Chester, comma, and if it's narrative, Chester, which author is outside of the brackets, 2 authors. You always use an ampersand when there's 2 authors. And if it's outside, you use and. 3 or more authors, if there is an acronym involved, and the first citation, first time you cite the acronym, you put it in square brackets. If it's narrative, you just include it in the in-text citation. Subsequent citations, you just use the acronym alone. And if the corporate author or group author is very short, there's no need to abbreviate it, you can simply spell it out. APA says provide the acronym for group authors if they are well known and use 3+ times. I've seen people use it twice, but I'm not picky on the 3+ times. So if you have one sentence with different sources, use the parenthetical or brackets format preferably because it flows easier. So and so and so, such as health, the Women Friedman, and self-esteem. So you can have multiple in-text citations in one sentence. If it's one idea with multiple sources, if it's within the brackets, you have to list your authors alphabetically in APA. This is not required by other styles, but APA says that you should list them alphabetically. So Swan comes up before 1. You put a semicolon between them within brackets. And if it's the same author, you separate it with a comma. So in this case, Swan 2020, semicolon 1 et al. So if you cannot find a date, you put N full stop, D full stop. And he also published something in 2019, 2020 that was cited, and he has something that has not been published yet. And APS says to use in press, not in process, in submission, partially done, in peer review. APS says to say in press. And in narrative, different authors in any order, you have normal list punctuation, so you have your commas, you don't have to put one before swan, that kind of thing. Authors with the same surname. So if J.D. Smith and C.H. Smith wrote something in 1988, you will put their initials in to differentiate which one. And here I did S.T. James and Singh, and Solomon and P.T. James, because the year is the same. Same first author with 3 or more authors. So if you had Smith, Singh, Ramchand, Jones, 2020, and Smith, Jones, Ramchand, and Singh, note the order is different, all right? Is it Smith et al, because it's 3 or more authors? Or is it Smith, Singh et al, and Smith, Singh et al? Anybody wants to tell me in the chat which one? Is it the first one or the second one? Any takers? Okay, I don't have any brave people. So this one is not correct. You would use the first 2 names if it's that similar, because you want to be able to guide the reader to know which of the references you're referring to. So let's talk a little bit about secondary sources, all right? And this is when you cite sources found in another source. So you're reading something, and this person is writing about somebody else, but you want to quote what that somebody else has said, all right? A primary source refers to original content, and a secondary source refers to content reported in another source, all right? Whether it's a book, a journal, etc. So this in-text citation format is used when you want to cite information reported in an item that you are reading, but you have not read the original primary source that you wish to cite in yourself. Okay? So the example is, Singh wrote something in 1901, but you cannot find it, you can't get hold of it. But you're reading about what he said in James and Peters. Okay. So what you do is you say whatever it is Singh said because you want to cite him, and you put as cited in James and Peters, and you only include James and Peters, the one that you have read, in your reference list, because you cannot put things into your reference list that you haven't read. And before you do this, you should always try to find the original source. So sometimes I see students write, so-and-so said something in 2021, and they are citing it from a source in 2022. When I see that, I will ask the student, try and find that 2021 resource, okay? So use this very sparingly. I hope that I'm clear. If I'm not, you can talk to me if you encounter and have this problem. Personal communication, emails, texts, memos, letters, chats, interviews, classroom lectures. Refer to these sources in text, not the reference list. Provide initials and surname, and the words personal communication, and as exact a date as possible. So you can have S. Renwick, open personal communication on January 17, 2023, said so-and-so, or you make the statement and then you open brackets and you include as much information as possible. If you're talking to several people in the Renwick family, you can say Shamin Renwick, personal communication, Peter Renwick, personal communication. So you have to find ways to make the references work for you. So you always think of your reader, and you always think of how best to guide your reader to find the information, or better, your examiner, all right, and your supervisor. So let's talk about creating a reference list. Anybody knows what's the difference between a bibliography and a reference list? Do you want to put it in the chat, or do you want to unmute and tell me?
Dr. Renwick.
Hold on. Yeah, go ahead. I think I'm hearing you.
Right. So in my recollection, the reference would be all those sources and authors you would have consulted and used in your document, and the bibliography will be all those sources, authors, and materials you would have looked at, but you did not use all of them in text. You did not cite all.
Excellent. I'm glad. Thank you very much for that. So the bibliography is all the sources you consulted, and a reference list are all the sources you cited. Okay. AP only allows a reference list. So every in-text citation must have a reference and vice versa. Okay. So let's talk about the list of references. So the UE thesis guideline says that you have to capitalize, caps, bold, and center your headings at the top of the page, a single space within a reference and 1.5 spaces between references. The list of references should be in alphabetical order. You include, right, for every in-text citation, you left justify the list, please, the reference list. And references must have a hanging indent, and I'll show you what that means shortly. Do not number the list. Do not put bullet points in the list, all right? Double check your list of references before submitting your work, even if you have used any kind of citation generator or a database that produces automatic citation. You are responsible for your reference list. Use the reference type format, a book, article, etc., that most closely resembles the type of source. Okay? Just because it is on the web does not mean that it is a website and a web page. You can have books, e-books, e-journals, e-reports on the web, but you're looking for the reference type format. And as I go along, I'll explain what those formats look like. But if I went into Google Scholar and I did a search and I got some results, can anyone tell me which, without opening it up, which of these are books? Look at the results, and is it 1, 2, 3, or 4? That's a book. And then you would use the book format to create the reference. Great, thank you very much, Ms. Kadu Ram Singh. Well, there was a big hint. It says book, but if it didn't, and you books.google.com gives some help. Crime and deviance. Thank you, Mr. Matura. Does anybody know what the others are? Basically, is there a journal? Can we tell from looking at the list of resources? Because remember, a lot of our young students only know the web, and they have difficulties. Some of them have never even seen a journal. All right. ProQuest journal, somebody, right? So that would be, where's ProQuest journal? That's 1, 2, 3, or 4. Nope. ProQuest. Okay. So while I talk about these things, let me just give you the answers. So this one is actually a thesis when you open it up, right? This one is actually a magazine article, CanadianPatriot.org, a book of force. And this one, Journal of Safety. And what I want to illustrate here is on a results list, all of those things are not web pages. And when you're using reference citation software, things like EndNote and Zotero and Mendeley and things like that, you need to know the format of the document to be able to do a correct reference. I mentioned the hanging indent, and this is what it would look like. The first line is flush and the subsequent lines are indented. So the first line is flush and the subsequent lines are indented. This is an example of I think I'm showing you the wrong example. This is the APA style example. For the UV thesis guide, each reference should be single spaced and then a space and a half between. My apologies. I should put another example here. Ignoring the spacing, you will see it's in alphabetical order. When there are multiple items by the same order, you put it chronologically by date. If there was a no date, it would come first. And it's left justified. It's the hanging indent is present, all right? And if it's a thesis, there's a 2-inch margin. So you will see it with a 2-inch margin on the left-hand side there. So managing your reference, they are online and free is Mendeley and Zotero. The desktop version of EndNote 20 is free from the University of the West Indies. You go to the student portal to download it. You will get a memo and you'll get a link at which to download it. I do have a LibGuide that provides information on EndNote. I can share that with you if you need it. I really advise people not to use Microsoft Word because the output requires much editing. And when you send it forward with your thesis, it's difficult to do corrections, all right? Google Docs seems to have an okay citation manager. I've checked it out. It still requires some editing, but it's not as difficult to use as Microsoft Word. Automatically generated references. Many databases provide references. UWLink has them. It's the host, ProQuest, WorldCat, Google Scholar. Use automatically generated software generates citation generation. So you have their websites that generate citations for you as well. You can use them. There's nothing wrong with using them, but I don't really care if you use them. I just want to see the final entry conforming to APA format. And what you double check for is that your author or authors is there, your year, the title and the subtitle if there's one, the publisher, the DOI, the web address. Those are the elements that you're checking for. You're checking to see that, well, this is the book in this case, and for journals, you will have the volume issue, page numbers, the journal title, etc. You need to get familiar with the kind of information that somebody will need to find the item that you're referring them to. So let's talk now about the elements of a reference. So a basic reference should have an author who wrote the item, a year of publication, when was it written, what is the title of this item, and source information, whether it's a publisher, it's a website, it's a conference proceedings, it's a volume, issue number, anything that will guide the reader. So when you think of a reference, you already explained its author date. So the author comes first, the year comes next. And then you have to say what it is the item is called, and then source information. What information can I give the reader to help them find this item? So some little things to pay attention to, because doing referencing is what we call pattern recognition. So you place a full stop after each element, right? Except that if it ends in a GUI or URL, when you leave out the full stop, you use commas within an element. I think this is an error. I'm not sure what that 4 is doing there. Apologies. So if you have multiple authors, you separate them with a comma. If you have source information between your volume number, your journal title, you'll use a comma. And if you do not have all the information for a particular source, use as much information as you have. Always think of how your reader is going to find it, or as I said in your examiner. So let's look a little bit about authors now. So if you always retain the capitalization. Okay, let's start with the first one. You get the information exactly as on the title page. You retain whatever capitalization the author wants. So if they have a common D, you should not be capitalizing it. You write your name with a common D. Initials have full stops and there's a space between. Once you have multiple authors, you will have an ampersand before the final author. And in your reference list, your corporate, your group authors are always spelled out. You do not use the acronym in an APA reference list. And you do not include titles like Dr. and Mrs. All right. Okay. I'm noticing I'm leaving out stuff, but they're in a longer presentation in February. So we'll just work with what we have there because we have short time to go. More than one reference by the same author in the same year, you arrange the works by title alphabetically, and then you put in A or B. All right. More than one reference by the same author, the single author comes first. All right. You arrange alphabetically by the names of the authors, so Smith and Johnson, A and B. Smith, Johnson, Evans comes before Smith, Johnson, and Winters, even though there are 4 authors there and there are 3 on the next line. If the word, you see why I said not to try and memorize all of this? What I want you to pay attention to is when you come across a reference and you have the same author 10 times, you say, oh, you know, Dr. Renwick said there's a way of organizing this. Let me check the handout or the manual or check on this to know how to do it. Because to try and remember all that detail is a lot. So if the word states anonymous as an author in APA, you actually use anonymous. If there's no author stated, move the title to the author position. So title, date, and publisher, Rainy Nights in the Caribbean, and then your in-text citation would be an abbreviated form. They tell you to use up to 4 letters of a title in your in-text citation. For a work with up to 20 authors, you list the first 19, and then you put an ellipsis, which is 3 dots, and you put the last final name. If you were using APA's 6th edition, then you would have listed 6 authors and then et al. But in APA's 7th, you use the ellipsis and you put in the last author. And in your in-text citation, that's where you use that. Dates. How do you treat with dates? So if you have to put the year only, sometimes you're expected, like for a blog or a magazine or a newspaper, you have to put the exact date. Sometimes there's just a year and a month, or depending on what reference format you are using, what type of format for that book or journal, magazine, blog, encyclopedia, etc. APA says to use in press, not submitted for publication, etc. If you know it's going to be published, so I have a book coming out later this year, I will put circa CA full stop 2024. For websites, they use the last date updated, not the review date, not the copyright date for APA. And if you cannot find an updated date, then you put N full stop, A full stop. The in-text citation, however, only includes the author and the year. So you will not put February 9th in your in-text citation. Let's talk about titles. For works that stand alone, that is an entire book, website made up of web pages, reports, you will put the title in italics in what we call sentence case or sentence style. And this is where you capitalize the first letter, any proper nouns, all right, and the first letter in a subtitle after your colon. For subwords, so this now is a chapter in a book, a web page in a website, an article, a conference paper. You do not use italics, you do not use quotation marks, but you still use the sentence, case, or sentence style. For journal titles, however, you're going to use italics and you're going to use headline style or title case. In title case, headline style, you capitalize all the words, nouns, pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, everything, all right? Except your conjunctions, prepositions, and articles. And in this case, all does not carry capital letter. Let's talk about the URL. So the URL, or what we call the address, in the address bar in your browser, the universal resource locator. If your document is a print version, in AP, they say it should not be a link. Do not underline and make it clickable. So it could look like this. APA says if your document is online, which is mostly our theses are all going online, they say make the URL linkable. And they recommend that if you have to go to a second line, you break the URL at the end of the line before any punctuation. So we also have the DOI, which is your digital object identifier, which is a bit of code that is, well, we shouldn't call it really, alphanumeric numbering system to give each article a unique number, all right? It's called your object identifier. And in the past, you are allowed to write DOI and then you put the number. But APA says today that you should put https://doi.org/ and then the alphanumeric number, because this here makes it into a clickable link. So once you've added this, you can click on this and it would go directly to the document. So there are some websites, JSTOR, for example, will provide you with what they call a stable URL. So preferably, if there's a DOI, you use that instead of a stable URL. And if you have a stable URL, you use that instead of the URL that you find in your address bar. If it is very long, you can shorten it. If you go to bit.ly, and you can get a shortened version of the URL. And if the DOI is very long, you can go and get a short DOI and use that in your paper as well. So let us now, in the last 20 minutes, do some reference examples, and then we will do just 2 practice items before we wrap up. So if you have a book, and it's a print book, you're going to have the author's surname, or the editor's surname, initials, your date, with their editor or editors, you put ED or EDS, the title of the work in italics, and the publisher. So one of the changes from APA 6 to APA 7 is that APA 7 does not require the place of publication. It is a major change. I am quite unhappy about it, but I have to live with it until they bring out APA 8, and hopefully they will return it. For those of us in the third world countries where we do not have, we have publishers that come and go. So we need to know where things are published. Anyway. I'm supplementing and move on. So you see your sentence style, all right, your space between your initials. And if it's electronic, you will add your DOI or your URL with no full stop on the end. And it will look like this. And we've made it clickable by doing the underline. Notice my little tiny indent hanging indent there. A chapter in an edited book. So you will have the authors of the chapter, the year of publication, the title of the book, you will put in the editor's names, not inverted, editors, the title of the book, the pages of the chapter, the publisher, and the URL, if you have that. So if you follow this pattern, this is the author of the chapter, read up is actually the editor of the book, Interrogating Caribbean masculinities. Notice the capitalization of the proper noun of the subtitle. And this is how you put the pages of the chapter. PP, number to number, the range, and whoever is the publisher. All right. So when you put journals, you do not put a PP, but the chapters, you put the PP to represent pages. Okay, Chanel, if you wish to come to the sessions in February, send me a note, please. Someone has to read. Okay. Journal print. So if it's a print journal, you'll have your page range, and there you go, your page range, your ampersand, notice before your final author. Everything is, all your author's names are written. The title of your journal is in italics, headline style. Your title of your journal article is actually in sentence style. And notice that your journal title and your volume number are all in italics. There's no space between volume number and issue. And there's a page range at the end. If it's online, you simply add your URL or your DOI. Okay, so this is an example with a DOI. This is an example with a URL. I think I did this at night, so I did not get my views too much. Apologies. Journal article online with article number. So if you have, this is becoming more common where they no longer have page numbers and or even leaving it blank, or they will have an article number. So you include your article number as the locator information. All right. And then you have your no full stop at the end. Your in-text citations would look like this. Your conference paper. So in APA, you actually put the dates of the conference in your year or date area, all right? You describe what it is by putting it in square brackets. APA allows you square brackets to describe your item. So conference presentation, full stop. It asks you, APA says the name, your conference directly. So these are differences to other slides. Excuse me. And you simply put the country, the city and country of the conference itself. So Rome is pretty well known, but we could have put it in Italy, and then your URL. If it's a conference proceedings, your author's title of paper, your editor's names, the title of the proceedings, all the way down to URL or DOI if you have one. If it's a conference proceedings, the paper will actually have some page numbers. You include that as well. So if you have a web page or document online with an author, you will have your author's names, your date of publication, the title of the web page, the website name, right? And your URL. You also have a web page or document online with a corporate author. In that case, you write out the author's name in your reference. Okay. The title of the page and the URL. If you have a web page that is liable to change, or a web page that is very important to your thesis, okay, APA suggests that you include a retrieve date before the URL. So you write it out as usual, your authors, your year, the title, retrieved, the date, and then you put from, and you put your URL. Newspapers, you do not put PP in front of your newspaper, you just put the number for the page And newspapers, you have to put the exact date of the issue. If it's online, you're allowed to put a URL, so you're pointing the person directly to the item. If it's online without an author, in APA, you put the title of the article, and then you put the title of the newspaper. I think unlike Chicago, I think you put the title of the newspaper as the author. APA suggests you do it this way, and in text citation, you can use up to 4 words of the title to create your text citation. For a magazine, you will include the exact issue. And I have 3 examples, one with an author that is in print, so there's a URL. This one, we have the title of the article and the date of the issue in National Geographic. And here we have, this one has a URL. So there are different ways of doing it. So again, you don't need to memorize. You just have to remember when you come across these things, there is a way to handle it. And you need to do your research, check the handout. Your thesis and dissertations published. If it's in a database, you include a publication number if there's one. If it's online in a repository, you put your URL. You use your square brackets to do a descriptor of what the item is. Okay. A DEd thesis from the university. This is a doctoral or a PhD dissertation from New York University. If it's unpublished, you indicate square brackets, unpublished doctoral thesis from the University of Sussex and the country. So government documents, I have a handout on government documents alone. So it's difficult to explain all that you need to know. The key things you need to know is that APA says you start with the department and not the country, as in other styles. And you put the year, the title, then you put the country, Trinidad and Tobago, and whichever ministry comes next. When it's electronic, you're allowed to just put the URL at that point. Sometimes reports have a report number, so you can include it. If there's no report number, you just leave it out. So let us talk about images, right? Whether it's stock or clip art, free or not. If you're not reproducing an image, you simply use an in-text citation under reference. Okay. So if credit is required, so whether it's free or not, you still have to give credit. Put the copyright attribution in the figure note and a reference in the entry list. So you will have your figure information, your note, and you put the information into the note for the figure, and you put a reference in your reference list. So the reference to the author, year, publication, so and if there's a Creative Commons license, you include it as well. Okay. And this is a possible example. And again, with images, you're allowed to put in a descriptor in square brackets, the name of the image, the database it came from, etc. So images, again, free or not, but this time you do not have to put any credit. It says it's in the public domain, and you can include it in your paper. So here you will set it up as a figure, and you'll simply put a note at the bottom. All right. If it's clip art that you find in your PowerPoint presentation, when you're doing your design, you can find art that is considered no attribution is required, and therefore you can simply do this kind of thing with it. So let's switch now and talk about generative AI. And I want to do a quick poll. But I don't know if I put you to sleep because I've been talking the entire time. And are you seeing a poll? Did I launch it as well? Yes, launch. Can you answer this for me? Do you use generative AI? Yes, no, are you not sure? And sometimes people will suggest an app to you and you use it and you did not even know it was AI or generative AI. Interesting results I'll share it shortly. I'm waiting. 10 out of my 19 attendees have answered. Well, I'm going to give you 10 more seconds to respond. Sometimes it's a matter of the connectivity and if how fast your data travels. All right, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So at least 38% of you have said yes, that's 5 of you. Another 6 says no, and another 2 says you're not sure. So this morning I spoke about AI somewhat. I have a couple of slides here on it and how to cite it. Stop sharing. There we go. So there's some concerns about using AI, especially generative AI. Now remember, it can be useful. Nobody's saying not to use AI. Actually, you may not even be sure you're using it. There can be browser extensions that may help. Be careful with copy and pasting directly. Remember that they confabulate, so they have inaccuracies or totally false. They may have plagiarism or copyright infringement. There are people taking OpenAI to the courts. All right. References generated may not be valid. Quite often they're empty references. And they may not exist even in a digitally formatted. Bing provides sources more than ChatGPT does, but it is better if you go to the original source of something and cite that instead of copying from your AI tool. So use words very carefully. You can check with your lecturer or supervisor before using AI tools. The University of the West Indies is looking at putting out a policy on generative AI or AI in general, and that should be coming in the next few months to guide you. But until then, check your facts, make sure, do not ask AI about things you know nothing about, because you will not know if it's telling you the truth, all right? You may be asked to declare your use of AI tools, right? Their declaration forms, formats that you can use. And then if you have to cite it, you cite the specific AI generated content you use or took ideas from. So there are 2 ways of doing it, right? Because content from generative AI is from a non-recoverable source that cannot be retrieved, if you have to cite it, you can use a personal communication format. So paraphrase from OpenAI ChatGPT AI language model, personal communication, and update. Or you can use the format for citing software. OpenAI, yeah, ChatGPT, the version, the descriptor, and the URL. So there are 2 formats that the APA presents you with. So what do you need in order to cite? So for a book, you need author, date, title, publication, URL, and DURL. For your journal, you need your volume number, issue number if they have it, your page numbers, if present, article number, etc. And if it's a website, put as much information that you can find. There's some common errors, punctuation. Check that each element ends in a full stop. There's no full stop after the UI. So you can check these for yourself. There's space between your initials, there's a space between the full stop and the number. no space between volume and issue. Your volume is in italics, your volume number is in italics. Your capitalization, you can check which ones that should be in sentence style, headline style. APA suggests you left justify your entire paper and references, and the new thesis guide gives you a choice. But I will just say to you that if you left justify your paper, it's easier on the reader. And examiner with 80,000 words to read, you can get it left justified might actually help. Check for your hanging indent, check for your alphabetical order, do not number your references. So we do have 5 minutes. I'm going to give you all of 2 minutes, and then I'm going to show you your handouts. I beg your indulgence for an extra 2 to 3 minutes of this session. Do you all want to give this a try and see if you can correct this reference? I'll give you 1 minute. Have a look, see if you want to write it out, or if you can identify what you should actually. All right, so let me show you what a correcting one looks like. And inverted, in brackets, your sentence style, your pronouns with your capital letters, your italics, your comma, your no space, your italics again, your range, your full stop, and your URL, full stop anyway. I do have another one, but we're going to skip that. I'm going to talk to you about your handout and your links. I just want to show you what your, do I have it here? Let's see. Right. So this is what the handout is going to look like. I'm going to send you this URL, and you have 3 pages talking about the text citations, formatting, the APA references. And each of these are handouts, government, legal docs, the changes from 6 to 7. And this is what the APA handout actually looks like. So if you click on any of these, you can go, for example, to reference example. And all of these are clickable, but what you're actually going to is what a blog should look like, what a book should look like, single author, 2 authors. And there are 44 different formats in this handout that you can use to verify your work. And then I have some notes at the end on how to handle multiple authors, secondary citations, that kind of thing, how to handle missing elements. So those are your handouts, and let me see. I'm going to drop these in the chat. All right. Oh, that did not come out correct, for every morning meeting. So it's not going to, let's see. All right, so your links are there. You can copy and paste it. And we do have an evaluation form that I would really like if you can complete before you leave this session. It's the last item. And with that, I'm going to ask you to complete the evaluation form and close the session. Let me summary evaluation form. This is my contact information. Certainly, if you're not a School of Ed, PhD and MPhil, send me a note if you'd like to attend the sessions that I'll have on Tuesdays at 4:30 p.m. February 7th, not Carnival, the 20th, 27th, the 5th and 12th of March. Those are the dates. I can send you a schedule. So with that, I'll thank you very much. And close our class. Please do the evaluation form before you leave. Thank you very much. Ms. Raja, were there any questions or anything I needed to deal with? Or?
No, that's it. Thank you for being so thorough. I'm so happy to have sat in myself. I learned a lot.
You learned ABA today.
Yeah.
All right. But if you want to come to the longer sessions, you can. I do a bit more detail, and there are a few slides that I dropped off to try and fit in the hour and a half.
Sure.
Thank goodness I made it. All right. So while people are filling out the evaluation form before they go, any questions? You can unmute and speak if you wish. This is a very quiet class. Normally I have a lot of interaction. Maybe they're tired. It's been a long day. What's the reason for using APA style? Okay. So different disciplines, Vicky, require stress on different aspects of referencing. Some aspects are more important to some people than others. APA is one that's very popular with both education and nursing. Most of the journals are in APA style. So having students or faculty familiar with this style to assist with their publications, that's a kind of a backward reason rather than about the style itself. I myself am more happy with Chicago. I hope Ms. Raja appreciates that. And when APA dropped off place of publication, I was not very happy, but I've had to learn a number of styles over the years. And between APA and Chicago, those are two very good ones. So the librarians don't choose the style, Vicky. It is actually the discipline or the faculty that does that. Does that help? I see it's 3 minutes past. I have begged your indulgence, so I'm going to have to close the session at this point. I'll stop the recording and all right. Thank you, Ms. Marchand. And of course, you have my contact information. You can write, call, email anytime, and I will try to assist. Thank you. Bye-bye.